Getting the new job was quick. I hadn't fully recovered from what happened to Victor when an email arrived. I expected something horrifying or dark. Instead, I was asked to clean up a hoarder's house after they passed away. The pay was more than I made in 3 months. But since the attack in the morgue, I learned a few things. The place Victor was recovering in cost a lot of money. The company I would be working for covered some of the costs. The rest would be on him or his family. From what I could tell, he didn't have any family left. I asked what would happen to him if no one paid. It was implied he would work off his debt once he was able. That meant working for the corporation that fought against supernatural threats. They had failed to pick up on the infected body that ruined his life. I doubted he would last long in that type of job. And would they really let him work when he was ready, or would they force him? I didn't put it past Lupa to have set all this up. I could refuse this new job, but I would never be able to live with myself afterward. I accepted the offer, and the following day someone arrived to get me to the location of the cleanup. In such a short amount of time, I've learned that supernatural things were real. I've seen a rabbit man, an infected zombie, and my boss gets turned into something no longer human. When I was told that the corporation I now worked for could magically make one door lead to another, I accepted it. I permitted them to use my front door. I opened it to find myself crawling out of a car instead of stepping out of my home. It was a jarring experience, to say the least. A man waited for me outside the house I was called in to clean. He had some gear, but it didn't appear he would be staying. His skin was dark, and a set of yellow eyes behind huge glasses gave away the fact that he wasn't fully human. Even though it was unseasonably warm out, he dressed in layers of baggy clothing. His black curly hair was tied into a messy bun. Honestly, he was cute in a nerdy sort of way. "I'm Samus. I'm here to give you some information about this job. It's simple, but it will be time-consuming," he explained in a soft voice. He showed me what looked like a hazmat suit. The white full-body suit had a plastic face cover with a respirator. This house must be awful if I needed a get-up like this. He then directed my attention to a large metal storage shipping container that had been converted into a dumpster sitting in the backyard. "We have the suit for you to wear so you don't bring home any bugs or breath in the rot of the house. There is no time limit on this job. All the cleaning supplies have been provided. You'll be able to call us if you require more. The neatest thing about this job is the dumpster. Here, let me show you how it works." Samus handed me a bag of trash that had been sitting by the back door. He wanted me to toss it into the large bin, but also for me to watch what happened after I did so. The issue is, I was too short. He paused to think for a moment, then a grand idea occurred to him. With some awkwardness, I got on his shoulders to see into the dumpster as I dropped the bag. The trash bag sank into the metal bottom as if it were water. That was weird, really weird. After I got down, he explained what I had just seen. Any non-living thing that is thrown inside is transported to a sorting facility. If we can recycle it, we'll do so. Anything beyond salvage is burned. The corporation recently designed a furnace that produces magic. It helps create a source of energy to power weapons instead of draining creatures. Oh, and if there is anything you would like to keep, you're free too. Just place it inside the clear bags, send it through the dumpster, and we'll clean it for you," Samus said, sounding excited over the special dumpster. "What if I toss a mouse or something like that by mistake? I assume anything alive wouldn't get sent through, but would they just get trapped inside and starve to death?" I asked. To answer my question, Samus went over and undid a latch that opened the heavy metal door of the dumpster to clearly shoo off the inside. "If you toss in anything alive larger than a bug, you can just let them out this way," he suggested. "Why did I sit on your shoulders?" I remarked in a deadpan voice. Samus froze, realizing his mistake. He brushed it off like a champ to help me put on the suit. This was an odd job for a supernatural company to ask me to do. Did the house owner die in a monster attack, or was there another reason? I asked Samus, and he nodded with his arms crossed. "There is one clean room on the top floor. It's locked, so don't try going inside. It looks like the son of the woman who lived here attempted some sort of ritual. We're unsure if it worked or what he was even trying to do. The son is missing, but his mother appears to die of natural causes. Her body was mummified by the time anyone found her. We removed the body, so don't worry about that. If you find anything you may fear to be supernatural, stop what you're doing, leave the house and call for backup. Well, none of that was comforting. I waited until Samus finished speaking before I put the hood of the suit on and got the respirator working. I dreaded walking inside the house, but my face didn't show it. Samus checked the time to see if he had been there for too long. It's nice having someone to help clean up scenes like this. Our workers keep getting eaten, but I think you'll do fine, so good luck. My stomach turned at his words. He did a cheery wave and I returned it. After he left, I really didn't want to go inside. But this was my job now. I better get it over with. I grabbed a box of garbage bags and then went inside through the back door. The door was blocked with so much trash I barely had enough room to squeeze inside. Thank God for the respirator and my lack of a time limit on this job. I knew this would take me forever to finish. There was a small back hallway that led into the house. Piles of moldy boxes lined each wall. Shoes and empty grocery bags were stacked on the very top of the boxes. Some piles reached the ceiling. I first cleared up the stacks blocking the door. After I could open it all the way, I started taking down boxes. Most were full of old newspapers, expired food, and rags. It was easier to carry the boxes to the dumpster 2 at a time and toss them inside than dumping everything into bags. I didn't keep track of time. I was sweating in my suit but didn't dare take it off. All sorts of bugs came out of hiding as I moved trash around. I almost felt bad for them for taking away their home. Since I wasn't sorting through the trash, the process was faster than I expected. I'd cleared out the small hallway. Stained floors that hadn't seen the light of day in years looked almost out of place in the rest of the house. I decided not to scrub them clean until I cleared out the rest of the house. I would just be tracking my dirty boots through the hallway to get to the dumpster. No point in breaking out the cleaning supplies just yet. I moved into the kitchen to see years of neglected plants, takeout containers, and more boxes. The stove had been caked in so much grime it would be better to toss the entire thing. I hated to see what the inside of the fridge looked like. I couldn't believe a person lived here at some point. Aside from some packed down footpaths in the dirt, there had been no signs of human life within the trash. I took countless trips to the dumpster. It felt somewhat satisfying tossing the boxes and bags over the top. At least all this waste would be put to some kind of use. It looked like the sun was going to set soon. I wanted a break but decided to wait until I couldn't see what I was doing, then pack it in for the night. I just needed to call someone to get me back home. It didn't appear I made a lot of progress despite how many trips I made from the house. Near the end of the day, I paused to stretch out my sore back. I found my mind wandering. How could someone live like this? Surely, they somewhat noticed how bad things were getting around them. Wasn't the owner getting sick from all the mold and insects taking over the house? I knew hoarders had a problem that made it impossible for them to throw away anything. I stared at the pile of disgusting pots and pans long forgotten on the stove, trying to think of a reason why someone may think of keeping them. Maybe they thought if they just cleaned the pots, they were still good, and things just got out of hand. Just cleaning one thing meant cleaning the sinks, the floors, and everything else. A set of stained pots meant something to this person. They were just trash now that the owner was gone. Didn't that apply to most things? People cared about things others might not. A song holds meaning when it may not be anything special to a different person. The only difference between myself and the women who owned this house was that I kept my clutter in my heart. The sun had gone down since I stopped to think. The house still had power. But the lights were so grimy it wasn't worth trying to work in the dark. I was about to pack up and leave when I heard something from inside the house. A bump just beyond the room I am still inside. I hadn't seen any signs the owner of the house had any pets at some point. Did an animal get inside and I just hadn't seen it yet? I took countless trips to the dumpster. It felt somewhat satisfying tossing the boxes and bags over the top. At least all this waste would be put to some kind of use. It looked like the sun was going to set soon. I wanted a break but decided to wait until I couldn't see what I was doing, then pack it in for the night. I just needed to call someone to get me back home. It didn't appear I made a lot of progress despite how many trips I made from the house. Near the end of the day, I paused to stretch out my sore back. I found my mind wandering. How could someone live like this? Surely, they somewhat noticed how bad things were getting around them. Wasn't the owner getting sick from all the mold and insects taking over the house? I knew hoarders had a problem that made it impossible for them to throw away anything. I stared at the pile of disgusting pots and pans long forgotten on the stove, trying to think of a reason why someone may think of keeping them. Maybe they thought if they just cleaned the pots, they were still good, and things just got out of hand. Just cleaning one thing meant cleaning the sinks, the floors, and everything else. A set of stained pots meant something to this person. They were just trash now that the owner was gone. Didn't that apply to most things? People cared about things others might not. A song holds meaning when it may not be anything special to a different person. The only difference between myself and the women who owned this house was that I kept my clutter in my heart. The sun had gone down since I stopped to think. The house still had power. But the lights were so grimy it wasn't worth trying to work in the dark. I was about to pack up and leave when I heard something from inside the house. A bump just beyond the room. I am still inside. I hadn't seen any signs the owner of the house had any pets at some point. Did an animal get inside and I just hadn't seen it yet? I strained to hear over my breathing. Carefully, I made my way through the knee-deep trash to the covered counter. The drawer squeaked open as I rooted around for some sort of weapon. Luckily, I found a large knife I gripped in a gloved hand. I thought I was ready for anything. My heart raced in fear, imagining anything from a wild raccoon to a man-eating monster. I wasn't expecting a person to come stumbling through the pathway. I clutched the knife as fear got stuck in my throat. I had flashbacks to the attack in the morgue. This person wasn't alive. I could tell right away. Their dried skin clung to bones, and torn clothing hung from a thin frame. I still knew they could hurt me. I started to move, but that caught the attention of the creature. He raised his head, eyes empty aside from a glowing red light. His lips were missing, causing his teeth to show in a forever gruesome expression. I moved faster as the monster screamed in a way that made my entire body tense. Within a second, the hands were on mine. He tore at my suit with clawed hands. I stabbed the knife deep into his chest, the blade getting stuck just above his collarbone. It didn't even slow him down. The clawed hands tore into my skin through the layers I wore. I held back a scream of pain as I raised one leg. I have an older cousin, and when we were growing up together, he liked to bully me with forced wrestling matches. I found that my legs are stronger than my arms. I lifted a foot to place it on the creature's stomach. With a hard push, I got it off me. I then took hold of a stack of boxes I hadn't gotten to yet and pulled them down. The mess buried the monster, but only for a moment. I started to run, but a hand shot out to grab my ankle. That time I did let out a small scream. The plastic face shield started to fog up in my panic. I crashed down to the ground, the hand still wrapped tightly around my ankle. I started to blindly kick, trying to free myself. I must have kicked the monster in the face. I felt something crack under my foot as the hand released its grasp. I got upright and ran for my life out of there. I slipped, falling into boxes and more trash. I needed to worry about an infection or bugs getting into my torn suit later. I made it outside only to realize a horrifying thought. My cell phone was in my pocket under the suit. My shaking hands tried to get the damn back zipper open. I didn't even find the end of the zipper when the creature came out of the house. The red eyes landed on me. It let out another horrible scream. I bent down and took hold of a scrap bike frame that had been left out to rust. I tossed it at the monster, hitting it across the face. It bought me some time to do something I wasn't certain would work. I pulled open the door of the dumpster enough to slip inside. The creature was hot on my heels. I got knocked down again. My back was pressed against the hard metal bottom of the container. The monster pinned me down. The teeth clashed against my plastic face shield. I was glad I kept it on. The claws tore at my clothing, leaving deep cuts along my shoulders and forearms. I was scared. So scared I almost forgot my plan. I got my feet up to kick the monster again. It rolled along the floor, growling and spitting. I couldn't afford to waste time. I rushed over to pin my knee into its rotten back. I heard something crack as the creature hissed. Then the body started to sink. I pushed as hard as possible, forcing it through to the other side like all the trash that day. I didn't think about whoever may need to deal with the thing on the other end. All I knew was that I would have died if I didn't do this. When the creature fully disappeared, I sat in shock. My body hurt and my head swam. When I was able, I got up to stumble out of the dumpster. I tossed off my hood and plastic scratched-up face shield. I considered calling someone about what just happened, but didn't think I was calm enough to do so. When I heard my name, I thought my heart might stop. I looked over to see a man I didn't recognize. "You're Rory, correct? How badly were you hurt?" He pressed as soon as he stopped in front of me. He was tall with brown hair and deep dark eyes. He wore a suit, and it took me a few seconds to realize we worked for the same company. Unless that thing was carrying some sort of disease, not much. I think. I didn't even know how much I'd been beaten up. I was still standing, so I figured I was fine. His jaw tightened, and I took a step back. He looked angry. At first, I thought it was because of what I just did. You could have died. You're human, and yet they sent you into a place before anyone fully cleared it. Lupa always does this. He sees humans as bait. He said upset over my working arrangement. I understood why he was so upset. I assumed people who could deal with supernatural threats were in high demand. Why use up their time when you could just toss a disposable human at the problem? I knew some risks came with this job, and yet it was still odd to hear how little my life meant to my new boss. Samus showed up next, looking as worried as the agent. "I'll take her to the clinic to get looked at. Toph, if you have time, can you look through the house?" Samus asked as he had already started to guide me away. "Is everyone at the sorting facility all right? I did just send a monster their way," I questioned. "Oh, don't worry about that. They already took care of it. In fact, the creature is a good study resource. It's being moved by pure magic. We might learn something about it. But besides that, let's get you taken care of," Samus said in a calm voice. He didn't look calm. He was scared of what condition he might have found me in before he arrived. The agent started towards the house, his hand at his side as if he had a hidden weapon ready to be drawn. I should ask for a gun or something for the next job. Okay, maybe not a gun. I was a terrible shot. I doubted I was seen as valuable enough to be given a magic weapon. I could dream, though. I was swiftly taken away to a small clinic where a black hair doctor with half-moon glasses looked me over. I was given some scrubs to change into so they could trash my clothing. I knew I would be tossing a lot of my clothes in this line of work, so made sure to wear things I wasn't attached to. I hurt, but at least they cleared me of any signs of infection. I wasn't going to be turned into a monster from a few scratches. In an hour, I had my wounds wrapped up and I was cleared to go home. Samus promised me that the house would be looked over before I was able to go inside again. The agent who arrived on the scene had a few hours between jobs. He ensured there weren't any more monsters ready to eat me. It was a weird feeling to have someone use their precious spare time on me. At least I was making friends at this new job. The next day, I still felt a little sore. I called to see if I could visit Victor for a few hours. I was refused. One of his caretakers told me Victor wasn't in the best mental state that day. I offered to cheer him up, but they couldn't guarantee my safety. He told me that Victor had tried to fold a worker like a paper crane. I decided to wait a day or so until I saw him again. I called asking if I could finish cleaning the Hoarder's house. I didn't have anything else to do that day. Samus met me in the backyard again with a new hazmat suit. He also handed over what looked to be a fancy metal pen. I liked pens. I couldn't help but steal any I come across, even though I barely used them. I asked to have this made. It's not much. If you hold down the clip, it turns into a blade. Samus explained. I looked over the silver pen and did what he told me to. I pressed down to see a blade spring out from the end. In the blink of an eye, the pen turned into a 6-inch weapon. I pressed the clip again to turn it back. Pen, sword, pen, sword. Samus said nothing as he watched me click between the two a few times. I shook my head out of my daze to thank him. If you hold down the clip while the blade is inserted into something, a small blast of magic will come out. Maybe not enough to kill. It should give you time to get away from the threat, though, he offered. I do appreciate having something sharp, but it doesn't seem like much, I said as I wiggled it between my fingers. Can I get something bigger? He shrugged, looking towards the house. Until we can get you into training, a gun would be useless. Right now, you're being sent to places with the lowest risk of getting killed by a supernatural threat. Lupa doesn't want to spare the resources on giving you a powerful weapon you may not use when it could be in the hands of someone who would. It didn't seem like most people who worked for Lupa enjoyed his company very much. His reasoning was logical, if not a bit too heartless for most people to accept. What was that monster anyway? I asked, so I didn't make Samus bad talk his boss more. That was the sun, it seems. He tried to perform a spell to make him immortal. That was the result. We think he drained his mother's energy. Most likely he stayed dormant in the trash, so that's why none of the previous agents sensed a creature there. We'll try not to let this sort of thing happen again. You'll try. I repeated to make a point. Samus gave a slightly pained smile. I wondered how many agents died because most of them could do nothing but try. If this was one of the less risky jobs, I hate to know what the more dangerous ones were. Can you thank the agent who came by for me? I requested as I started to get ready to finish the job. I gave him your number. Toph is overprotective of the newer workers. If he has the time, he'll help. Samus kept looking at the time as he spoke. After he helped me into the suit again, he needed to go back to his real job. After he left, I let myself think about just how pressed for resources and workers the corporation was. A chill ran down my spine at the thought of just how many monsters were out there that pushed the company to its limits. I figured they could cover up the attacks with